Today is Friday, 7th of July. It is almost probably 1 week since the central bank governor's sixth think tanking at the hub, and it is also 1 week since we were observing in the Smart Partnership movement and together with the governors and Smart Partners guests at the hub, the passing of His Excellency Secretary Masire. And just a few minutes ago, in fact, about 10 minutes ago, Lekoma Motibasela from Botswana, who worked with Secretary Miller all his professional life and was brought up by him, our JG member, just went back home, having arrived on Monday after the funeral of Secretary Masire, and we've been doing quite a lot of networking in our own group with people from Botswana, with our chairman, with in Malaysia, Uganda, Swaziland, Lesotho, etc. One thing that we understood in the last few days, Lekoma and myself and with those that we interacted, was that the significance of last week central bank governors' interaction with the presence of a sample, a signal of people specialized or companies specialized in leveraging the value of knowledge and data. What we realized is that more than what we've been trying to articulate, the time has come for not only central bank governors, but governments as such, and organizations including the Bureau of Standards, etc., to be involved in quite effectively prioritizing this area. And we were, particularly the governors, were very impressed of those special guests that they had, but in particularly of one issue that was brought to their attention in relation to building identity and data and etc. So it looked like Paul Ferris, whom we are welcoming at the CPTM Smart Partners Hub, and his colleague today, it looks like Paul was part of Smart Partnership movement for so many years. And because of that, we took the liberty to say, well, Paul, what about if you come and probably lead the follow-up, more or less, the taking forward from the governors, with a specific reference to identity and everything else that goes with it in relation to data. Very difficult to probably relate to data unless you relate to some of the user type of application that Paul and his colleague are talking about. They are, he's the chief executive and founder of Object Tech, and Lekoma Motibasela was just introduced to Paul, and very glad to introduce Paul now and his colleague to
Thank you very much.
Bring us back and probably even beyond the interaction with the governors. So please, Paul, welcome you to the governor to the garden room in the CPTM Smart Partners Hub, because it's a very hot day, which is unusual. But you are Australian and British and Welsh, but your identity is a smart partnership lately. But,
I'm one of these people that has moved around the world, so identity is a very important thing, in particular when you move across country borders, but everyday life as well. And since I'm an engineer who's worked with data for over 30 years now, I think what we're doing, I think, is a brand new way, but also a far better way of handling identity, not just for individuals, but every sort of identity, even to the identity of companies, countries, banks, and also things, the Internet of Things. So,
but define identity, Paul, in relation to, is it a passport, is it a person, is it a company, is it a...
Yeah, I think that's
all of those things?
That's fundamental. Many people working in identity industry, it's a large industry right across the world, and the people who have been working with identity,
relatively young.
Well, border protection has been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Passports actually haven't been there for as long as people think. Passports really in this country came from a letter from the Foreign Secretary to introduce you to whoever you were travelling to. But there's an industry that deals with identity, and they generally believe that your identity is what is given to you. If it's a passport, that little book is the government saying this is who you are. If you go to a bank, they want to see the passport and they want to see some other documents before they open a bank account, and then your identity,
gas bill or whatever,
the gas bill, or these days, something for your internet connection, and then they give you a plastic card, and then the plastic card is you. And actually, we all know, and everybody in the rest of the world realizes, that your identity is you. It's not a card, it's not a phone, it's not a passport. It is you, and it's quite a complex thing. You use your identity in different ways, depending on the situation. I mean, here I've just been formally introduced, but everybody who knows me sort of looks at this face and says, that must be Paul Ferris.
Yeah.
Right? If I cross a border, I'm expected to have some documents or something these days to show that you cross a border, unless you're in Europe, and then you can cross borders without any problem. So the context is very, very, very different. If I want to go for a drink, for instance, in this country, I have to prove I'm over 18 to be able to do this. That's been a long time since that happened. But the fact is that the system for that in this country asks young people to show a card which has a photograph, their full name, their address, their date of birth, all this extra information. If the card actually says this person's over 18, that should be adequate, because the law just requires them to be over 18. So my identity is something that is used in context and changes all the time. So what the problem that really has been trying to be tackled in many, many different ways depends on the context. And the systems that have been built up have become huge and very stuck in the ideas from 30 or 50 years ago. And this is what has been put in, and it's deemed as this is our identity system, whether it's for banks or countries or almost everything else. And it's really not fit for purpose for today. And that's really what the object tech
is all about.
Is building.
So the reason why you've been personally also dealing with international standards organization, and you're preoccupied with standards, is because of the identity.
Yeah, identity is something that is quite delicate as well. It's very important. Identities can make your life or sometimes break your life. People can make decisions about who you are based on good information or terrible information or their own prejudices. And these things make it a very complex area. And so the idea that anybody, certainly not a small company, but even large companies or even governments, own and control somebody's identity in so many ways can be used to own and control the person themselves as well. So it's very important that we recognize there's a possibility of a all-seeing eye, and nobody wants that. And when I say nobody, I'm not just talking about individuals. There's companies don't want it, governments don't want it. So it's very important that these things aren't owned, but standards are a great route to everybody owning it. A common ownership.
So could one say that you are in the business of identity, or you are in the business of data for identity, or what?
Fundamentally, we are in the business of data, and that's really one of the reasons we're a good company to be tackling these problems. We're also, although we've got very good technology, we're also more than a technology company. We have legal. We have a professor of law from LSE on our board. We have compliance people. I'll introduce you to Pete Sweetman. Pete has been working across the world in these sort of issues of financial inclusion and refugees issues for most of his life. So we are an amalgamation within the business of more than just a technology company. Yeah, but our technology is pretty good too.
No, of course. So before we go into the application, how do you make the money?
Well,
if the business is a business, one makes money. And how would one make money? Because I'm asked all the time, it's data. What do you do with data?
And we're a commercial company, so everybody says, well, what's your part in this?
Yeah.
And I've just said, what we're not doing is owning the actual identity system itself.
Yeah.
But what is apparent to somebody like myself, I spent 30 years building different systems for mostly financial services businesses, but others as well. And every one of those systems has required an identity. So
it's actually limitless.
If there was a single identity system, I could have saved a lot of time over the last 30 years building an identity system for a system, then a different identity system for another system.
Yeah.
And every time you build a system and then you find that you've got to build some form of identity, then you realize if there was only a common standard and identity, then you can build systems very quickly and very easily. So in a way, how do we make our money? Let's say we have an identity system in, and we've made some huge strides to that in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
A single identity system that everybody can buy into. It's not ours, it's everybody's, therefore standards. And then what we've done, for instance, in Dubai is provide something that's a very useful identity for everybody who wants to go to Dubai. Now that exact same system can be put into Botswana, into Australia, into
Namibia,
Malaysia, or
Uganda,
or anywhere. That's the point.
So just go a little bit through the system in Dubai.
Well,
the
basis of our system is something called self-sovereign identity. So at the start I was saying how companies and governments could hold your identity, and in fact they do. I've worked in many places around the world, so I think we were counting up the other day that at least 38 major corporations hold my identity. They all spell my name differently. Some of them have got my current address, most of them haven't. And all around the world, these people think that they are holding my identity. So individuals, companies are holding my identity, and of course, countries also hold my identity. The fundamentals of what we're doing is saying that I should hold my identity, and I should keep it up to date, and I can put into the identity a great deal more than I've ever told any of those companies, insurance companies, the banks, all the different people who have provided me the service. So fundamentally, we are saying I hold my identity. Then, of course, who's to say that I don't change my identity, or what I present? My name's Paul Ferris, and how are people going to believe that I'm Paul Ferris? Yeah. So we use something called a blockchain to provide this trust.
Finally, we come to blockchain. I should have introduced you as blockchain, but
I'm very pleased you don't, because it's one important, but it is only one part of what we do.
Yeah.
So blockchain.
Say what is blockchain now?
Okay, so blockchain is fundamentally something called a ledger, which is a very well-known concept for about 5,000 odd years, that you keep a record of something, and you don't change it. So it's not like a database. A blockchain is a ledger. You put you record something in it, and if you want to change it, you record that you are now changing it. Whereas a database, you put some data in, you take some data out, and there's no record of the data ever being there.
And it's not quite just the storage.
It's definitely not the storage. It is actually fundamentally distributed as well. It's the distribution.
That is.
Now, that means that many people help run the blockchain. When I say people, they could be companies or just computers run the blockchain. And the point there is that in order to try to change something without anybody else knowing becomes incredibly difficult if many people hold the same information, and you've got to persuade them all to change the information, or if you want to hack it, you have to hack all the information that everybody holds at the same time. And that makes it a very secure system. Because to try to hack one system, centralized system, to change a record is maybe a difficult thing to do, but the benefit is immediate. But to try and hack 7,000 systems all within the 7-minute time frame in order to get any benefit from it means it's a much harder thing to do, and that's what makes blockchain fundamentally a very secure system. And of course it's a ledger, so everybody can believe what's on that ledger because it can't be changed without everybody knowing.
So it is particularly, Peter, is it particularly in the financial sector only, or we go beyond that?
No, I mean what we're looking now is at the potential uses and value of this in a number of different markets and a number of different environments. And my background pushes me in towards using it in and around financial inclusion and the delivery of services. So identity can be developed at any point in somebody's life, Jeff. So for migration and migrants that arrive in the country, you can begin to establish an identity. That identity, because it's secured and verified, can then be used for the delivery of services direct to an individual.
So in financial inclusion,
yes. I mean, for financial inclusion, identity and proving who you are means that a lot of people are included from standard financial services. So if there is a way of doing that, which people are happy with, and which is verified by various sources, whether it's from village leaders to community heads to governors to your small trading history and so on, means that then you can begin to access, you have an identity rather, which you can then begin to use to access either traditional financial services, or actually what we'll probably see if there is a market is types of financial products nobody has even yet thought of.
Right.
So this can work alongside micro credit.
So in a way, this is
that
beyond the mobile banking.
Yes, I mean it's part of mobile banking, or can go beyond
an extension.
Mobile banking. Yes, so you still need the identity.
Who take a lead in introducing the blockchain, the ledgers?
Well, one thing you can't expect.
We talked about the central bank governors, but
well, I mean they're in a great position. But one thing you can't expect. Commercial companies, large commercial organisations like, say, telcos to do, is do anything apart from build systems around them owning your data.
In fact, there was an ITU presence there.
So there is a great incentive, it seems, for large companies to hold your data. But actually, that holding of the data becomes also a liability, because in the same way as the blockchain is secured by distribution, the centralization of your identity makes it a honeypot. You break into a bank, their data systems, and you can get millions of accounts and identities. So who can actually affect this? It has to be somebody or a group of people that has an effect both practically into the economy as it stands, but also politically. Because there are political issues here.
Of course.
Every country may think that holding the country's the information about their population centrally in a single database is a good thing to do. But exactly those systems have been hacked in the same way as the commercial systems.
Vulnerable.
America can't keep these things safe. because they're fundamentally not safe. They are honeypots and they're valuable, and it's worthwhile putting a lot of effort into breaking into them. So the people who can affect this most have, on one hat, they hold a hat of policy and good governance in countries, and the other side, they also have an effect on commerce and making sure that commerce and trade work as well as possible.
And access of anybody who has
yes,
no
and these two aren't mutually exclusive. And
of course, we were grasping last week also with this idea, as I mentioned to you, of securing the state. If that is a notion which is outside of the conventional sort of immediate perception of anybody when you say securing. But these potentially ledgers are able to actually also bring in security, or
fabulous
in a way
example.
that others might be more difficult to implement.
Yes, and also the value of doing the hack and so on becomes so much less because you put a lot of effort into getting one record, so you can't get at the others because they're all encrypted separately, and any changes that anybody then made that are seen, unseen by tens of thousands of different people, and so okay, your name or your address has been changed, and then you go back to Vodafone or whoever it is, and somebody's nicked my address and my phone. Well, prove it. Well, here's the change of that. It's not the data, but the verification of that data has changed on the blockchain.
I think it will be fascinating to have a think tanking a whole day about it, on starting with identity and
data, the importance of data.
When you say data, immediately probably people connect it with statistics.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But I think the identity is even more attractive in our view. So, how do you think we should go about trying to stimulate the interest not just of the financial sector, but also the governance, as we said, and so on. Civil society as well. I don't know what that means, but
I'm not quite sure either.
We know what it means, but
it's one of those things that everybody talks about.
Everybody
but
talks
really
about, like in Hamburg, they are very unhappy, civil society. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But no, in the smart partnership movement, in the smart partnership way of doing things, we don't refer to civil society because it's ambiguous. But there are anybody who is involved in something to happen is part of it. So if you look at that, they are NGOs, that they are civil societies group or whatever they are.
It could be
they are
the legal
traditional
system.
leaders or whatever.
It could be the press. It could be.
So we need to
all those
identify a few things that could happen and see who needs to be around to make that happen. Somebody needs to initiate. So probably central bank governors are now very alert to it. There could be more. And then to see what does it.
We put some thought into this,
Okay.
and we thought that if we could give an example that people could understand and everybody knows about that is going to affect this, then I think going through an airport, making an airport easier to go through, just walking onto an aeroplane, walking off an aeroplane, was a good example of something far more powerful. It's not about making a trip on an aircraft so much easier. That's important. But it's how you use the system that allows that to happen. And that system has so many implications. It has implications for what we've talked about, is the identity of people, but it can help trade. It can help financing trade. It can help finance work for individual countries, not everything going through the existing structures. But it also can help not or prevent the creation of monopolies of power, in that the person themselves and the country decide how this should work. So we've built a system that's flexible. Now, how to make that work? I mean, smart thinking in a group where people can see there's a tangible example, and these are some other tangible examples that we're very happy to talk about, and provide.
So if one would think about an application of this system,
people are happy to think about an application and go, aha.
That's it.
And in our experience, as soon as people start telling us about the applications they can think of, which often doesn't take very long, it just is a couple of ideas that aren't intuitive, but once you string them all together, people will go, oh, does that mean it can help, for instance, at our trade ports? Does that mean that we can help people be in financial inclusion, but without the main banks coming in and affecting the economy, or without allowing all our financial systems to go through the telephone system? So whatever the applications that people bring along, not us, that can sit on top of the set of ideas.
You're mentioning, Paul, also that obviously, well, it may be an airport like in Dubai, but in fact, if the whole government structure is aware, all the various about the application of this identity, then, and they have to know anyway, because there's all this interface that needs to happen. But then there are so many applications.
So, for instance, if you walk into a country,
it's almost like a strategy for the whole government.
It's a whole of government strategy.
Yes.
And that's really where we're at.
And how do you call this strategy? Identity strategy, or make identity work, or how?
Identity is important to all of this, but for instance, health provision. If you know who you're providing to, and you can make sure that the people who are coming into your country have the appropriate health insurance, then you don't need to have hospitals bill people who are ill, which is a difficult thing to do. But if you are confident those people, because you know you have their identity, have got health insurance, and it's valid health insurance, or if, let's think of something a bit more positive, if somebody wants to start up a business, and you've identified a business person, and then you can help that business person actually make the processes of government more effective. So this is one thing.
This is what is a very great interest, obviously. You imagine that.
Yeah.
So how big is your company to make sure that you are going to expand in relation to the potential?
Of course, fundamentally I'm an engineer, and a catalyst is something that an engineer understands. You only need a small amount of catalyst to make a very big thing happen. And I think what we are is a great catalyst. We've made some great strides. We're very much involved in establishing standards. More people involved for us, the better.
Yeah, no, we have the Bureau of Standards. Probably they could be involved in additional central bank governors, whatever they could do. So,
we're working with ISO standards, International Standards Organization, and also W3C. They're the people who standardize the internet.
Actually, we're making, usually the group send a message at the ISO annual conferences in the last 6 years or so.
Right.
Last year was all about digital and standards, and we were told as a group of the developing countries, DevCo as it's called, that probably we went a bit too far in relation to the needs of a developing country context. But then we brought in central banks and so on, and probably this year we may just choose this particular example.
I'm not sure you can go too far in
I don't think so too, but I think by now they realize that, everybody realizes.
Yeah, I think it's the great hop.
Is it absolutely?
So I remember, everybody has to have access to a cheap computer, but in reality it's the smartphone on the smartphone network, which is run by solar. I've been to places where you can't. There's no road, no water.
Excellent.
But you can make an international phone call.
Very, very interesting. And thank you very much. I think probably we were a little bit more than about 10 minutes or so. 15 minutes or so. No, it is my usual enthusiasm for these sort of things. And in the next 2 weeks, we're trying to probably address some of the interests of the ministers of finance into what the governors. And of course there are formal messages, formal reports or formal briefs that we're making on behalf of Comoros, Minister of Finance for Comoros. And we just found out that we've been told that the chair this year of the Commonwealth Finance Ministers, who usually meet in Washington behind World Bank, IMF, so before World Bank, IMF at the same time, and before the Commonwealth governors, the group that you met, but just 52 of them, they were trying to make it a bit more interesting, because usually they go there, they are more interested in World Bank and IMF. And the issue since last year to do with blockchain and everything else, which we briefed,
right.
when we say we, the governors briefed with everybody else, was attracted by Commonwealth Minister of Finance. So the Canadian minister is a chair this year, and his theme is innovation and
blockchain's going to be part of it.
Blockchain will be part of it. So there are a number of venues, but I think the more attractive part is identifying some specific applications and get on with it, and then share with everybody else the excitement of it.
Yeah,
thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
indeed.
Paula. Thank you, Peter.